Hey, sixth graders, we are on to lesson 17-2, which is proportions. Now, I know you don't quite know what that means yet, but you will by the end of the lesson. Make sure you set up your Cornell notes and get everything on there. To start off with our learning target, we are going to make proportional ratios. We are going to complete a table of ratios, and we are going to determine if ratios are proportional or not. So 3 different things. We're going to squish them onto one page. If you run over to the next page, that is completely fine. I just wanted to have an example of each way that a test or homework problem might ask you about these things called proportions. So to start out with our vocabulary, a proportion is 2 equal or equivalent ratios. Now, we learned already that a ratio is a comparison of 2 numbers, and it kind of looks like a fraction. All of the ones that we do today are going to look like the fraction version. And the proportion has 2 of those ratios. So instead of 1 set of numbers, it has 2. So we're going to look at how do we solve these if there's x in the problem. And I don't know what x is. How am I going to solve them? There are 2 steps that you follow. First, you're going to cross multiply, and then you're going to divide. Now, here's the example over here. This is a proportion. It has 2 ratios. We have 4 to 10 and 10 to x, and they're separated by an equal sign in there. So this is a proportion. Now, we don't know what x is, and we're solving for that. So what we do is we cross multiply and divide, and you will see that I did my work down here. So I kind of circle it like the butterfly, which means 4 and x are together, so that becomes 4x. 10 times 10 is 100, so 4x equals 100. And then our second step back over here was to divide, because I have 4 times x, and we do the opposite when we're solving for an equation. So we divide by 4 and divide by 4, so then we get x equals 25. So when you're solving for that missing piece, cross multiply kind of like a butterfly, and then you divide to get x by itself, just like we've always been doing with equations. Now, here's another example for us to practice. Let's say there were 7 cups of sugar when you make 3 pies. So the first ratio, 7 cups to 3 pies, is right here. Now, we want to complete the proportion, and we want to know, okay, instead of 3 pies now, how many cups are going to be in 9 pies? So we have to solve for that missing piece. So we're going to look back up here at our steps, cross multiply and divide. So I'm going to go ahead and circle like a butterfly. So we have my 7 and my 9 are together, my 3 and my x are together, and then I'm going to multiply. So I have 3x, 3 times x is 3x, equals 7 times 9 is 63. Now, this is an equation. We know how to solve an equation. We do the opposite. 3 times x, the opposite of times, is going to be divide. So I need to divide by 3, divide by 3, and then I get x equals 21. So that would be my missing piece back up there. So cross multiply and divide. Easy peasy. Now, the second way that they might ask us a question about a proportion is they might say, is this a proportion? Is it proportional or not? So our first example here, you'll notice these don't have any x's. There's no missing piece. They've given us all of the numbers. So my first one here is 4 over 8 equals 5 over 10. If we want to find out if this is proportional or not, we're going to do the same steps up above. We're going to cross multiply. Now, we're not going to have to divide because there's no x that we're solving for. We just have to multiply and see if we get the same numbers. So I'm going to cross multiply. I circle it like a butterfly there. 4 times 10 gets me 40. 8 times 5 also gets me 40. Since those 2 are the same number, that means that this is proportional. I got the same number when I cross multiplied. So that makes them proportional. Now the next one over here is 3 over 8 equals 4 over 9. We're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to circle my 3 and my 9 together, my 8 and my 4. 3 times 9, 9, 18, 27. So I get 27 on one side. 8 and 4, 8, 16, 24, 32. I get 32 on that side. So right now we have 27 equals 32. Now those are not the same numbers, so they aren't equal. So these ratios are not proportional if they were to ask me. Nope, because they don't have the same number, not proportional. So just go ahead and cross multiply if you ever want to check that. Now, the last way that they will ask us a question about proportions is in a lovely table. So I'm going to show you that there are 2 ways that you can fill in for missing numbers in a table. So right now we're pretending like we are doing a pancake recipe. Everybody loves pancakes. So in this pancake recipe, we're trying to figure out, okay, you know, sometimes you need to double a recipe or make less of it because it's a really big recipe. So we're pretending, okay, there's some missing pieces here because I'm not quite sure what the exact ratio needs to be, but they tell me here, the awesome part is they give me the first one and they say, okay, the ratio is 2 to 3. So I can't mess up that ratio the rest of the way or my recipe's not going to turn out right. So I always need to have 2 to 3. So my next one over here, it has a missing piece. It has something, some number of eggs if I have 6 cups of flour. So first it was 2 eggs for 3 cups of flour, and now it's, I don't know, for 6 cups of flour. There's 2 ways that you can solve it. You can go back up above and pretend that this is X, and then cross multiply and divide. So you could do it like this to solve. So that gets me 3x equals 2 times 6 is 12, and then we divide by 3, and then I get x equals 4. Now, an easier way, I'm going to erase that because that way would work just like up above, but I like this way better. An easier way would look like this. So I'm going to ask myself, how do I get from, what color haven't I used? Blue. How do I get from 3 to 6 times or divided by what? Well, it gets bigger, so I know it's multiply, and it's times 2. That's how I got from 3 to 6. So if I'm looking to find this missing x up above, I have to do the same thing. So I would have to do 2 times 2, and that would give me my missing piece in here, which is going to be 2 times 2 is 4. Now, you can do it either way, cross multiply and divide, or just ask yourself, how do I get from this one to this one? Because I'll need to do the same thing on the other side. Either way will get you the answer. Now, let's do this last missing piece over here, and you can do it any way that you so choose. Now, just notice, if you were to do this cross multiply way, you're going to have really big numbers because you have to do 12 times 24 equals 8x. That's going to be huge. So I'm going to look and see if there's an easier way to do it. How do I get from 8 to 24? 8, 16, 24. I have to do times 3. So if I did times 3 on the top, I have to do the same thing on the bottom. So 12 times 3 gets me 36. See, that way was much easier because I wasn't multiplying huge numbers, but I could have done it that way. Either way works. So whatever you do to the top, you have to do the bottom. Or on this one over here, we did the bottom one first, and we were solving for the top. Either way, you have to do the same on the top and the bottom. We will do many, many more of these in class, so don't feel nervous if you don't feel super great about them yet. We will get there, I promise. Thank you for doing your video. I really appreciate it, and we will see you guys soon. Bye, 6th graders.